So today's video has one main objective: to help you improve your photography edits quickly. In this video, we're going to go over the main mistakes that amateur photographers are making when it comes to editing your photography. But we're not just going to go over what those mistakes are, we're going to get into how to fix them as well, so you can start immediately improving your photography once this video is done. Let's talk about it. And big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. So the backstory on this video is basically a follow-up to a video I published a couple weeks ago where I went over the main reasons why your photography may look amateur. The video did really well. A lot of y'all enjoyed it. A lot of people enjoyed the information. So I'm going to go and do the same thing here, but with photo editing, which is something I'm very familiar with. This is actually one of the main things that made me really fall in love with photography. I love the idea of taking the world around me and being able to put my spin on it. Now, when I started editing photos, I was just atrocious. I mean, really bad. I even showed a photo in a group show way back in the day where I turned a waterfall purple, and it was ridiculous, like most people when they're first starting out. But all these mistakes over the last 10 years have led me to the point that I'm at now, and just like in the last video where I did one of these more amateur versus pro topics, I've made all these mistakes, and I've seen others make these mistakes as well, including people that I've coached. So let's get into what all these major mistakes are. The first reason why your photography edits might look a little bit amateur has to do with a long forgotten piece of Lightroom, which is the calibration tab. Now, in Lightroom, way at the bottom of your modules, there's something called calibration. Now, what calibration allows you to do is make blanket adjustments to your colors and essentially calibrate every image based on how you set this calibration. You see, every photo, the colors are made up of blue, red, and green. Now, with camera calibration, you can set the blue, red, and green pixels basically however you want, meaning every time you bring a photo into Lightroom, if you apply the same camera calibration, each photo will essentially have the same base to the colors. That's a very rudimentary explanation of how calibration works, but it's different than the HSL sliders, which stand for hue, saturation, and luminance, where you can individually change color channels in your image. Like if you wanted to edit blue, you could move the blue slider. Calibration is completely different than that. Now, the way calibration issues manifest in your edits is one, by presets. People download and purchase presets all the time, and they don't realize there's a camera calibration edit made to that particular preset. And this camera calibration setting can dramatically change the overall look of your image because it's changing all of the colors in every single picture. It's essentially changing how your image is read. Look at this example right here. We have two photos that are edited the exact same way except for the camera calibration. That is the only thing changed in these two images, and as you can see, they look completely different. Now, the issue arises when you take this edit that works on this photo and you apply this same calibration to another image. Look at this example right here where I took the photo on the left and applied the same camera calibration to this Porsche photo on the right. As you can see, even though it kind of worked in the forest photo, it definitely does not work on this Porsche photo. The camera calibration is negatively impacting our image. And the same thing with this other example where I took the calibration from the forest image on the right and applied it to this Porsche photo as well. As you can see, this image doesn't look very good either. So if you're someone using presets and there's a calibration built into that preset, you just need to be aware that it's there and maybe make some adjustments to it, tone it down a little bit, and customize it to something that works with you. But once you find a calibration setting that you like that's a little bit more moderate, like the example on the left right here, we took those two images that didn't look very good and we found a camera calibration that's just a little bit more moderate, something that works. When you find that sweet spot with your calibration, you can move that calibration setting to other images that are made with different cameras and essentially have the same color base. So now you can have your images match from one camera to another. The second reason why your photo edits might look a little bit amateur has to do with something that I call color gaps. Take a look at this example photo right here. Can you tell me what the issue is with this edit? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The issue with this edit is the fact that the color manipulation that happened in our sky has resulted in these gray gaps in our sky. This is what I call a color gap. Now, typically color gaps happen primarily on sunsets like this. Sometimes you'll see them in art murals and photos that are extremely colorful where people are making big adjustments to their HSL slider. Your HSL HSL sliders allow you to individually change color channels in your image, but if you get a little bit too loosey-goosey with these sliders, or you're using a preset that has heavy color manipulation and you use that preset on a photo that it might not work the best for, you get these gaps in your colors. So look out for it, and when you see it, all you gotta do is go back into your HSL sliders and figure out which color adjustment is creating this gap and fix it accordingly. Now, the third reason why your photography may look a little bit amateur is a quick one. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but it's you editing your photo without the end destination of your photo in mind. So in Lightroom, if you right click on the white backdrop that I have, you have the option to change to black, to change to gray, and changing these backdrops will change the way your image looks as you're editing it. If you edit against a white background, you will see highlights differently than you editing against a black background. Now, for most people, their photos are going to end up on social media, and if that's you, you don't have a lot of control over if someone's using light mode or dark mode on their Instagram or their smartphone. But if you're someone looking to print your photos, or you plan on having these photos in a particular frame, you need to know what matte color will be used in that photo. So if you are printing on a black matte, you want to edit your photo on a black background. The reason I always use white backgrounds is because I put a white border on all my photos. And when I print my photos to be in photo books, like my last book, every single photo has a white border on every single page. So I'm editing with my end location in mind, and you should do the same thing to make sure your photo just looks the best that it can. Now, the fourth reason why your photo edits may look a little bit amateur has to do with the fact that you haven't realized that less is sometimes more when it comes to photo editing. Now, let me explain what I mean here. When we're beginners and we're just starting out, it's exciting and almost overwhelming to have so much photo manipulation ability at our fingertips in a program like Lightroom. I already mentioned how I went completely nuts with my early edits, and I was changing waterfalls to purple, and I was going crazy with the color sliders. It's completely normal. Do it, have fun with it, it's part of the expression. But as you're doing that, also make a mental note that sometimes taking stuff away from your image can actually improve your photography. One major example of this is simply by cropping your photos. Once you learn composition, like what I talked about in the last video on this topic, you understand that sometimes you want your image to be more readable. Readability is just as important as the edit you're applying. Like in this example, when I crop the photo down, I remove some distracting images from this photo, and I think the crop is just a little bit more visually appealing. It's an easier photo to read, and all I did was take away the top part of the image to find more balance. Another example of this is something that I mentioned in my last amateur versus pro video, which is retouching your images. When you have an image that might have elements that are just completely unnecessary to the story you're trying to tell, removing them will result in a cleaner, more easy to understand and read image. As in this example right here of this Porsche captured in this beautiful sunset light, I love the photo, but I don't like all these distractions taking away from the composition that I created. So to solve the problem, I just removed everything that's circled, and the image looks a lot cleaner. Now, another example of this is something like the clarity slider. Now, clarity is up for debate. Some people like the effect it has on your image, and if that's you, by all means, go for it, use it sparingly. But in my opinion, with digital photography, something like the clarity slider typically can result in a lot of noise and chunkiness to your image, and you can consider actually dropping your clarity into the negatives. This is something I do on a lot of my images because digital photography at times can just feel too sharp, and with the photos that I'm trying to create and the things that I'm trying to put in my next book, I don't always want the sharpest image. I want a photo that maybe feels a little bit more natural, maybe a little bit more film-like, so I bring that clarity down. I'm actually taking clarity away from the image to, in my opinion, improve my photography. So adopt that mindset. Go crazy with your edits, have fun, but also recognize that at times a little bit less can actually be more. Now, before we continue on with this topic and we get into reason number 5, I briefly want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're someone out there editing all these photos and spending so much time in Lightroom, you need a place to display your work, and no one makes it easier to build a portfolio than Squarespace. My website, evanramp.com, is built on on Squarespace, and I have a video breaking down exactly how I built my portfolio. I'll go ahead and link that video in the description down below so you can literally copy it step by step. Now here's the thing, Squarespace is not just a tool to showcase a portfolio, they are a one-stop shop for everything related to your creative business. If you want to build an email list and market to people who enjoy your work, you can do that with Squarespace's email marketing tools. If you want to sell products like a preset or like me, a photo book, you can do that with Squarespace's e-commerce tools. And with Squarespace payments, you can accept payments straight through Squarespace and you don't have to deal with all these third-party payment processors. And on top of that, Squarespace makes it so easy to do all of these things. Building a website is simple with their drag and drop templates and tools like Fluid Engine, and this same level of convenience and ease applies to things like building out a course, building out your email marketing tools, and building out your product pages for anything that you're trying to sell. Now, don't take my word for it. You can try it out for yourself by going to squarespace.com/EvanRamps to start a free trial. And when you're ready to sign up and send your site live, you can use code EvanRamps to save 10% at checkout. So head down to the description and check out that portfolio video or any of the other videos listed under the website resources tab to show you how you can take your photography business to the next level using Squarespace. So go to squarespace.com/EvanRamps to start a free trial, follow one of those videos, and when you're ready to sign up and send your site live, use code EvanRamps to save 10% at checkout. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So the fifth reason why your photography may look a little bit amateur on the editing side has to do with the simple fact you're not using the Transform module in Lightroom. Now, Transform is one of the most powerful tools that Lightroom has because it allows you to straighten your images with the click of one button. When I discovered this in Lightroom years ago, my mind was blown, and I'm always surprised at how many people don't know that it's there. Now, the way Transform works is essentially it analyzes the photo and looks at the vertical and horizontal lines and straightens out your image from a perspective standpoint. Now, this is a great example of this because it was realistically impossible for me to create this image with a proper perspective because of how low I was to the ground. This Manhattan Bridge photo would have required me to be on a ladder or have a drone to get all the lines perfectly straight. With Transform, I can just click one button and the image is immediately straightened for me and it looks a million times better. And this applies to images that are more simple or even more complex, and you have the ability to manually do this as well by using a guided transform. So you can pick the lines in your photo that you want to use for your perspective and create basically the perfect looking image, all controlled by you. Now, personally, I rarely find myself in situations where I have to use a guided transform. I typically use auto or full and everything is completely fine. The image looks so much better just with the click of one button. Now, reason number 6 why your edits might look a little bit amateur has to do with masking your photos. Now, in the video I made a couple weeks ago where I talked about amateur photography mistakes, I mentioned masking as one of the main mistakes that people are making, but I didn't go in detail on how to use masking to your advantage. Masking essentially allows you to create an image that's easier for your viewer to understand. That's at least how I personally love to use masking. So look at this example photo from this image in New York. When I look at this photo, the first thing I think is this is a little bit flat. The image is kind of cool. I like the shadowy figure walking towards this tunnel. I like the lead lines provided by the lighting on the roof and the lines on the ground, but I thought the image could be a little bit better and a little bit more dynamic. I wanted people to use those lead lines to go to something, and right now that's missing. So what I did with my masking on this image is I wanted to bring that to life by having people's eye go towards this tunnel. So what I did here is I applied a couple different masks. One mask to warm up this tunnel and make it the focal point of this image. I also applied a mask at the top of the image to bring some depth to the highlights, to brighten up the top of the frame just a little bit. And then I applied 2 masks to the bottom of the image to darken up these corners so your eye immediately was drawn to that center. Using masks as a tool to help people understand what they're supposed to be looking at in your image is one of the biggest things that distinguishes professionals from amateurs. Professionals know that even way back in the film days when people were working in dark rooms, they still dodged and burned parts of their image to make a more visually compelling photograph. You're doing the same thing now, it's just on the computer and you have a lot better tools at your disposal. Now you can go in and select objects and select eyes and select the sky in your photo, all with the click of one button using the amazing masking tools that Lightroom has to offer. So originally I was going to wrap up the video and then I remembered one more issue that could be affecting your photos that happens to a lot of people because they simply do not know it's there. Now this has to do with your expertise export settings in Adobe Lightroom. Now, recently when I picked up a new MacBook Air and brought the new version of Adobe Lightroom Classic onto that machine, when I went to export a photo, I realized, oh yeah, the default settings on Lightroom are not optimized to get you the best photo for the internet, for social media, and for printing. So what you want to do when you export your photos is make sure you go to quality and make sure your quality is set to 100. When you first get Lightroom, I believe the default is something like 80. This is going to limit the quality of your photos upon export. So no matter how good they look in the computer, they're not going to look as good once they're out of your editing software. The same thing goes for resolution. Resolution is set to 240, I believe, as a default. You want to change this to 300 pixels. This is going to allow you to get a high definition image. Now, one more thing a lot of people do is they will resize their photo in Lightroom to save space on their machine and when they're loading the photos to social media. In my personal experience, I do not do this. Instead, I go to limit file size and I change this to something conservative like 4000, 5000K, and I get the maximum quality of that photo and I get the full resolution for that photo as well. It's just a smaller size, so it's more manageable for storage. And every single image I've uploaded to Instagram or on social media for the last 10 years has been done using these export settings, and it's really convenient. It works great for me, and I don't have to keep going back and re-exporting photos because I resize them to different sizes for social media, for the web. They're all full size, they're just a little bit smaller. So that's what I recommend. That could be one last thing that you're doing to negatively impact your photos. If you have anything that you think I left off the list or anything that you've done to help your photography, feel free to drop it in the comments down below. There's definitely things that I left out of this video, but for me, these are the main things that I see people having trouble with. If you enjoyed the video, do me a solid, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you are not yet, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.